And like the excuse, you did what was in your heart, just not very convincing to me. Like, you screw me over, and well, in my heart I meant to do well. That just wouldn't cut it for me. Another benefit is that you never have anyone saying to you in Jewish life, you need a closer walk with the Lord, my friend.
Yeah.
It's like, you need to do the mitzvah, you need to do the commandments, you need to shape up, you need to get a job, not just try to blog, or, like, it's very blunt. Like, I had a mutual friend of ours ask me the other day, what's a Jewish attitude towards success? Because I think I just emailed a friend of hers, like, what are the most prestigious lunch dates in Loma Linda? Like, I've been doing this feature on my blog, what are the most prestigious, Shabbos invites in Pico Robertson, in Valley Village, in Fairfax La Brea, in Orthodox Judaism. So Jews tend to be much more blunt and direct about things like status, money, sex, etc. Regarding status, God tells Abraham, I will make your name great. So fame and status is one of the promises that God gives to Abraham. So as Jews, we accept that that's part of life. I kind of grew up in a Christian professor's home where, for instance, money wasn't really talked about very much. Like, money was kind of, beneath. Unholy is like, it's the life of the mind that counts. But Jews have a much more pragmatic attitude towards money, sex, power, status. And so I told this woman, Judaism has a very similar attitude towards success. As Christianity, just we're more blunt about it. Like, if you want love, sex, money, power, fame, you're more likely to admit it as a Jew, because these desires are not in and of themselves a bad thing. It's how you go about trying to accomplish them.
Well, and having money and status and all sorts of things, I mean, those are the things that empower and enable one to do more mitzvah. I mean...
Yeah, having a good name is not a sin in Judaism. Like, people work hard to have a good name, and they're like glad to have a good name. Like, and you'll see this when you compliment a Jew. If you tell him, God, that was a great lecture you gave, that was a great article you wrote, or that was a great point you made about the Torah, Monica, the Jew will typically say, thank you, and did you read my other article, and did you catch my lecture last week?
That's true.
I remember when I was asking around who should I put on my list of the most prestigious Sabbath invites, I had one friend say, oh, you should put me down. Like, you would not find that in Christian life. And he was absolutely right. I had him down already. I already had him down on the list, because he absolutely is one of the more prestigious invites. But you would not catch that Christians would not say, oh, you should definitely have my home down as among the most prestigious invites. And if you compliment a Christian, say, oh, that was like a really righteous thing you did by giving away 5% of your income to that charity in Africa. And they, oh, no, not me, Luke. I'm a sinner.
Yeah.
No, not me. So I think, like, Dennis Prager blows away his Christian friends when he tells them, no, I think God's fine with me. Dennis Prager thinks that God is happy with the life Dennis Prager, is living. Most Christians who are serious about their Christianity seem to walk around with this deep sense of inferiority, that they're unworthy of God's love.
Right.
Well,
that's what they're told.
That's what they're told.
The fundamental basis for Christianity.
Your righteous deeds are like menstrual rags.
Right.
To quote Isaiah, but it's a favorite text of Christians. Well, Jews I know, particularly I mainly know Torah Jews, walk around with a very deep sense of worthiness. And I think it's because Judaism's a religion of action and study and very stiff requirements. When you do a lot of difficult things, you walk around with a sense of worthiness. Like, I learned Italian, I passed my PhD, I got my PhD, I worked really hard, and, if salvation to heaven is a free gift for anyone who asks, like, how's that going to, like, oh, I'm a great person because I accepted a free gift. Like, people who take charity, it doesn't imbue them with self-esteem, self-worth, and self-confidence. Like, I'm on welfare. I've been on welfare for 10 years. I don't have to get a job because I got 3 kids. I got AFDC. I don't need a job. And I just feel great about myself. So people who accept theological welfare probably going to struggle with some unworthiness as well. Another great breaking news story, just as we're speaking right now, this man writing from a penitentiary cell, he was having a real dark night of the soul, thought he'd spend the rest of his life agonizing over the night he broke into a random house and methodically tortured all 5 of its residents. But Jesus was like, nah, you're good. And he took away all those years. And he expected to wallow in suffocating guilt, for forcing a mother to choose the order in which he strangled her children and wiped them away in a jiff, which is ironic because, the family he murdered in cold blood was praising to Jesus, the whole time. So this guy's saying, bang, bing, boom, I've got salvation. So he says, if I hadn't found Jesus, I'd feel really bad about all my crimes. But, I'm right with God. I'm right with Jesus. Like Jesus has forgiven me for strangling those five people. So, why shouldn't I forgive myself?
Yeah, that's one of the dark sides to Christianity, is this inevitable kind of free pass function. Somebody can commit a heinous crime and then ask for forgiveness, and it's all gone. It's all gone.
Nowhere in Deuteronomy do I find Moses saying, and how do you guys feel about this? He never says that, does he? He doesn't seem to want feedback from the Israelites.
No, but that's kind of a problem that Moses has, though. I don't know if that's one of his shining moments. He doesn't really like to hear a dissenting voice or a differing opinion. I don't know if that's a good thing.
It's very different than when you go to non-Orthodox synagogues. You'll often have gatherings where people will get together and talk about how they feel about this week's Torah portion, which is kind of what we're doing. But you won't find that in Orthodox life. I remember I was really shocked when I started entering Orthodox life back in 1994, when the rabbi often would not encourage questions from the bema. He just wanted to give his talk.
Right.
And then you could come up to him privately and ask a question. But like all the other non-Orthodox synagogues that I was used to, it's like, and feel free to butt in any time if I open it up for questions. Anyone here have a thought on this week's Parsha? And I'd start going to Orthodox synagogues, and the rabbi would stand up, give his lecture on the Torah, then sit down, and he didn't seem particularly interested in what anyone else's thought was on that week's Parsha. So there are certainly Orthodox rabbis who do encourage discussion, but it is a very different world. It's much more hierarchical the more traditional you go in Jewish life. The more modern and open and liberal you go, then you're more likely to have. How do you feel about this week's Torah portion? So, Monica, how do you feel about this week's Torah portion?
Well, this is always a hard section to read because it feels so, it feels very harsh, and it feels very legal and very legalistic. But I'd actually not read it in this translation previous to this week, and 16:19, the first verse. My translation is kind of interesting because it says, "You are not to cast aside a case for judgment. You are not to, especially, recognize anyone's face, and you are not to take a bribe, for bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the equitable." And of course, I zeroed in on this mention of
face.
The face.
I thought
right.
you'd go for the face.
Yeah, because that's not your translation, is it? It doesn't
No,
say face.
no.
Yeah.
You shall not respect someone's presence.
Right, which is, I mean, if we're just going to look at it at a linguistic level, that's a very different thing, to recognize somebody's presence or be aware of somebody's presence as opposed to recognize somebody's face. And obviously, all of my study of Levinas and the whole idea of the face-to-face influences my reading of this section. But, when I think about the face, I think about the face as being the thing that calls us to responsibility. If you see the face of the other, that's what reminds you of your responsibility, of your infinite responsibility, the responsibility that precedes your being, essentially. So it's interesting that here in this moment, the person who's making the judge, is told he's not to be able to recognize anyone's face.
You were at